Introduction to Cybersecurity Principles and Risk Management, a comprehensive guide to threat modeling, security architecture, and enterprise risk frameworks for modern digital environments by Emmanuel Tuffet, founder of UWeb's Technology, educating the next generation of tech and cybersecurity professionals. In an era where digital transformation drives every sector of society, from finance and healthcare to education and national defense, cybersecurity has evolved from a technical specialty into a foundational pillar of modern life. The systems we build, the data we generate, and the networks we depend on are constantly exposed to threats that are growing not only in number, but in sophistication, scale, and impact. As a result, the need for a structured, principled, and deeply practical understanding of cybersecurity has never been greater. Introduction to Cybersecurity Principles and Risk Management arrives at a critical moment. This book is not merely an introduction, it is a strategic foundation. It bridges the gap between theoretical knowledge and real-world application, guiding readers through the essential pillars of cybersecurity with clarity, precision, and purpose. Whether you are a student entering the field, an IT professional expanding your expertise, or a decision-maker seeking to understand risk at an organizational level, this work provides a roadmap that is both accessible and enterprise relevant. One of the defining strengths of this book lies in its structured progression. It begins with the core principles, the very DNA of cybersecurity. Concepts such as the CIA Triad, threat landscapes, vulnerabilities, and attack vectors are not only defined but contextualized within real-world scenarios. The inclusion of frameworks like the cybersecurity kill chain allows readers to move beyond static definitions and into dynamic thinking, understanding how adversaries operate and how defenses must evolve accordingly. From there, the book transitions into security architecture and controls, where theory meets design. The layered approach of defense in depth, coupled with an exploration of administrative, technical, and physical controls, provides readers with a holistic view of how secure systems are built and maintained. The discussion of network security, endpoint protection, and identity and access management reflects the realities of modern enterprise environments, where security must be integrated across every layer of the infrastructure. Perhaps the most critical dimension explored in this work is risk management. In cybersecurity, absolute security is an illusion. Risk is the constant. What distinguishes mature organizations from vulnerable ones is not the absence of threats, but the ability to identify, assess, and manage risk effectively. This book introduces readers to both qualitative and quantitative approaches, enabling them to evaluate risk with both intuition and precision. Concepts such as risk appetite, tolerance, and the development of a risk register are presented in a way that transforms abstract ideas into actionable strategies. Equally important is the focus on incident response and business continuity. Breaches are no longer a question of if, but when. The ability to prepare for, detect, respond to, and recover from incidents is a defining capability of resilient organizations. Through structured frameworks and practical scenarios, this book equips readers with the mindset and tools necessary to respond under pressure and to learn from every incident. The inclusion of legal, ethical, and compliance considerations further elevates this work. Cybersecurity does not operate in a vacuum. It exists within a complex ecosystem of regulations, standards, and moral responsibilities. By introducing frameworks such as NIST and ISO IEC 27001, alongside discussions of data privacy and ethical decision-making, the book reinforces the idea that true security is as much about governance and accountability as it is about technology. Finally, the exploration of secure practices and emerging trends ensures that readers are not only grounded in fundamentals, but also prepared for the future. As technologies such as cloud computing, artificial intelligence, and the Internet of Things continue to reshape the digital landscape, cybersecurity professionals must remain adaptable, informed, and forward-thinking. This book encourages that mindset, one of continuous learning and proactive defense. What makes this work particularly compelling is its balance. It does not overwhelm with unnecessary complexity, nor does it oversimplify critical concepts. Instead, it delivers depth with clarity, structure with flexibility, and knowledge with purpose. It reflects a deep understanding of both the technical and strategic dimensions of cybersecurity. As you move through these pages, you will not only gain knowledge, you will develop a way of thinking, a way of analyzing systems, anticipating threats, and making informed decisions under uncertainty. That is the true value of this book. It does not just teach cybersecurity, it cultivates cybersecurity professionals. In a world where the stakes are higher than ever, this foundation is not optional, it is essential. This book was not written by accident. It was built through experience, perseverance, and purpose. Cybersecurity at its core is about protection, protecting systems, protecting data, and ultimately protecting people. But before I ever approached it as a discipline, I came to understand it as a responsibility. In a world where everything is becoming digital, the ability to secure information is no longer optional. It is essential. Every organization, every professional, and every individual now plays a role in this digital ecosystem, whether they realize it or not. My journey into this field has not been a straight path. Like many, I had to learn, adapt, and grow through real-life challenges. One of the most defining moments of my life came after a serious accident that changed everything. I went from being physically limited to rebuilding myself step by step, learning how to move forward again, both physically and mentally. That experience reshaped my mindset. It taught me discipline, patience, and the importance of resilience. It also deepened my faith. Through that process, I rededicated my life to God, and I began to see my work differently. Knowledge was no longer just something to acquire, it became something to steward. I understood that the skills I was developing were not only for personal success, but for service, impact, and legacy. Cybersecurity became one of the ways I could contribute, to protect, to educate, and to build systems that others can rely on with confidence. This book reflects that mission. It was designed to give you more than just definitions or surface-level concepts. It is structured to help you think like a cybersecurity professional, someone who understands not only how systems work, but how they fail, how they are attacked, and how they can be protected. From the foundational principles like the CIA Triad to more advanced ideas such as risk management frameworks and incident response strategies, every section is built to guide you from understanding to application. I intentionally structured this book in a way that mirrors real-world progression. You begin with the fundamentals because without a strong foundation, nothing else holds. You then move into architecture and controls because security must be designed, not added as an afterthought. From there, you explore risk because every decision in cybersecurity is ultimately a risk decision. And finally, you step into response, compliance, and future trends because cybersecurity is not static. It evolves every day. This book is also meant to be practical. The case studies, frameworks, and structured approaches are here to prepare you for real scenarios, not just exams or theory. Whether you are preparing for a career in cybersecurity, strengthening your current role, or building your knowledge from the ground up, the goal is the same: to equip you with a mindset that is analytical, disciplined, and proactive. But beyond the technical aspects, I want you to understand something deeper. Cybersecurity is about every system you secure, every risk you assess, and every decision you make impacts real people. It affects businesses, families, and entire communities. That is why integrity, ethics, and responsibility are not optional traits in this field, they are requirements. You are not just protecting data, you are protecting confidence, privacy, and stability. As you read this book, I encourage you to approach it with intention. Take the time to understand the why behind each concept. Challenge yourself to think critically, apply what you learn, and most importantly, remain committed to growth. The field of cybersecurity will continue to change, but the principles you build today will remain your foundation. This work is part of something bigger. It is part of a vision to educate, empower, and elevate individuals who are ready to step into this field with purpose and excellence. And if this book helps you take even one step closer to that goal, then it has fulfilled its purpose. Emmanuel Tuffet prologue. It only takes a single moment. One click on a malicious link, one unpatched vulnerability, one overlooked configuration. In that moment, systems that were once trusted become compromised, data that was once secure becomes exposed, and organizations that once operated with confidence are forced into crisis. Cybersecurity is often invisible until it fails. Behind every breach is a story, a sequence of events that, when analyzed, reveals something deeper than just technical failure. It reveals gaps in awareness, weaknesses in design, and most importantly, a misunderstanding of risk. The modern digital world is not just built on technology, it is built on trust. And when that trust is broken, the consequences extend far beyond servers and networks. They impact people, businesses, and entire societies. We live in a time where information is one of the most valuable assets on the planet. It flows across borders, systems, and devices at incredible speed. Yet, with that speed comes vulnerability. Threat actors, ranging from individual hackers to organized groups and nation-states, are constantly evolving, adapting their methods to exploit even the smallest weaknesses. The reality is simple. No system is completely secure. But that does not mean systems cannot be protected. The difference between vulnerability and resilience lies in understanding. Understanding how systems are built. Understanding how attacks happen. Understanding how risk is identified, managed, and reduced. Cybersecurity is not just about reacting to threats, it is about anticipating them. It is about thinking ahead, designing with intention, and making decisions that reduce exposure before incidents occur. This book was created to guide you into that way of thinking. It is not just about tools or technologies. It is about perspective, the ability to see beyond the surface, to recognize patterns, identify weaknesses, and make informed decisions in complex environments. Whether you are new to cybersecurity or expanding your knowledge, the goal is to equip you with a foundation that is both practical and strategic. Because in this field, knowledge alone is not enough. You must develop awareness. You must build discipline. You must learn to think like both the defender and the attacker. As you move forward, you will begin to see cybersecurity not as a collection of isolated tasks, but as an interconnected system of principles, controls, and decisions. Every configuration matters. Every action has an impact, and every layer of protection contributes to the overall strength of a system. The question is no longer whether cybersecurity is important. The question is whether we are prepared. This is where your journey begins. Emmanuel Tuffet Introduction Cybersecurity is no longer a specialized discipline reserved for a small group of experts. It is a fundamental requirement for operating in today's digital world. As organizations continue to adopt cloud technologies, interconnected systems, and data-driven strategies, the surface area for potential threats continues to expand. With this growth comes an undeniable reality. The need for individuals who understand how to secure systems, manage risk, and respond effectively to incidents has never been greater. Introduction to Cybersecurity Principles and Risk Management is designed to provide a clear, structured, and practical foundation for understanding this evolving field. This book does not assume prior expertise. Instead, it begins with the core principles and systematically builds toward more advanced concepts, ensuring that readers develop both knowledge and the ability to apply it in real-world scenarios. At the heart of cybersecurity are a few essential ideas that guide everything else. Concepts such as confidentiality, integrity, and availability, commonly known as the CIA Triad, serve as the backbone of security thinking. These principles define what it means to protect information and systems. However, understanding these principles alone is not enough. You must also understand the threats that challenge them, the vulnerabilities that expose them, and the attack methods used to exploit them. This book is structured into 6 key modules, each representing a critical area of cybersecurity. Module 1: Core Concepts of Cybersecurity. You will begin by developing a strong understanding of foundational principles, including the threat landscape, common vulnerabilities, and attack vectors. This module introduces the cybersecurity kill chain, providing insight into how attackers plan and execute their operations. Real-world case studies, such as the NotPetya ransomware attack, will help you connect theory to actual events. Module 2: Security Architecture and Control. Security must be designed into systems from the ground up. In this module, you will explore the concept of defense in depth and learn how different types of controls, administrative, technical, and physical, work together to create layered protection. Topics such as network security, endpoint protection, and identity and access management will give you a comprehensive view of modern security architecture. Module 3: Introduction to Risk Management. Cybersecurity is fundamentally about managing risk. This module introduces key concepts such as threats, vulnerabilities, and risk itself. You will learn how to assess risk using both qualitative and quantitative methods, understand risk appetite and tolerance, and develop a basic risk register. These skills are essential for making informed decisions in any cybersecurity role. Module 4: Incident Response and Business Continuity. No system is immune to attack. What matters is how effectively you can respond. This module outlines the phases of incident response, from preparation to recovery, and lessons learned. You will also explore business continuity and disaster recovery planning, ensuring that organizations can maintain operations even during disruptive events. Module 5: Legal, Ethical, and Compliance Aspects. Cybersecurity operates within a broader framework of laws, regulations, and ethical responsibilities. In this module, you will gain an overview of key regulations such as GDPR and HIPAA, as well as frameworks like NIST and ISO IEC 27001. You will also examine ethical considerations, including responsible disclosure and professional conduct. Module 6: Secure Practices and Future Trends. The field of cybersecurity is constantly evolving. This final module focuses on best practices for securing systems, introduces the Secure Software Development Lifecycle (SDLC), and explores emerging areas such as cloud security, IoT security, and the role of artificial intelligence in defense and attack strategies. Throughout this book, the emphasis is not only on understanding concepts, but on developing a mindset. Cybersecurity professionals must think critically, anticipate potential threats, and make decisions under uncertainty. This requires more than technical knowledge. It requires discipline, awareness, and a commitment to continuous learning. As you progress through these chapters, you will begin to see how each component of cybersecurity connects to the others. You will understand how vulnerabilities lead to risk, how controls reduce that risk, and how response strategies mitigate impact when incidents occur. This interconnected perspective is what transforms knowledge into capability. Whether your goal is to enter the cybersecurity field, strengthen your current role, or build a foundational understanding of digital security, this book is designed to guide you step by step. The journey begins with understanding, and from understanding comes the ability to protect. Emmanuel Tuffet. Module 1: Core Concepts of Cybersecurity. Defining cybersecurity and its importance. Cybersecurity involves the protection of interconnected systems, networks, programs, and data from digital attacks, damage, or unauthorized access. Its purpose extends to ensuring the confidentiality, integrity, and availability of information. This discipline encompasses a wide array of technologies, processes, and practices designed to safeguard digital assets. Defining cybersecurity. Cybersecurity refers to the practice of defending computers, servers, mobile devices, electronic systems, networks, and data from malicious attacks. It is a broad term that covers many different aspects, from protecting individual computers to securing entire organizational infrastructures. The goal is to prevent unauthorized access, use, disclosure, disruption, modification, or destruction of information systems. Core components of cybersecurity is built upon several foundational components that work in concert to establish a robust defense. These include network security, application security, information security, operational security, disaster recovery, business continuity, and end-user education. Network security. This focuses on securing computer networks from intruders, whether targeted attackers or opportunistic malware. It involves protecting the internal infrastructure, data in transit, and access points. Real-world example. A company deploys firewalls and intrusion detection systems, IDS, at the perimeter of its network to monitor and control incoming and outgoing network traffic. The firewall blocks known malicious IP addresses, while the IDS alerts security personnel to suspicious patterns of data transfer. Hypothetical scenario. Imagine a smart city's traffic management system where all traffic lights, cameras, and sensors are connected via a dedicated network. Network security measures would prevent an attacker from gaining control of this network to manipulate traffic signals, causing chaos or accidents. Application security. This focuses on protecting software and devices from threats during their entire lifecycle. It involves security measures implemented within the application itself, as well as the underlying infrastructure it runs on. Real-world example. A financial institution develops a mobile banking app. During development, they conduct rigorous security testing, including static and dynamic application security testing, SAST/DAST, to identify and fix vulnerabilities like SQL injection or cross-site scripting, XSS, before the app is released to the public. Hypothetical scenario. A popular online gaming platform integrates robust authentication mechanisms, such as multi-factor authentication, MFA, and regularly scans its game servers for exploits that could allow players to cheat or gain unfair advantages by manipulating game code. Information security, InfoSec. This aims to protect the confidentiality, integrity, and availability, CIA, of data, regardless of its form, digital or physical. While cybersecurity specifically deals with digital threats, InfoSec is a broader discipline that encompasses all aspects of information protection. Real-world example. A healthcare provider implements strict access controls to patient records, ensuring only authorized medical staff can view sensitive health information. They also encrypt patient data both at rest, stored on servers, and in transit when being sent between systems to maintain confidentiality. Hypothetical scenario. A research laboratory developing a new drug implements policies requiring all scientific data to be backed up daily to an off-site location and enforces strong encryption on all research files, preventing competitors from stealing intellectual property or a system failure from leading to data loss. Operational security, OPSEC. This involves the processes and decisions for handling and protecting data assets. It includes user permissions when accessing a network, procedures that determine where and how data can be stored or shared, and the steps personnel should take in response to security events. Real-world example. A government agency has a strict clean desk policy, requiring employees to clear their desks of any sensitive documents or removable media at the end of the day to prevent unauthorized physical access to information. They also prohibit the use of personal USB drives on official computers. Hypothetical scenario. A startup developing a groundbreaking AI technology trains its employees on social engineering awareness, teaching them to identify phishing emails or suspicious phone calls that might attempt to trick them into revealing sensitive company information. Disaster recovery, doctor, and business continuity, BC. These define how an organization responds to a cyberattack or any other event that causes a loss of operations or data. Disaster recovery involves the recovery of data and operational capabilities, while business continuity focuses on maintaining essential business functions during and after an incident. Real-world example. After a major data center outage caused by a power surge, an e-commerce company activates its disaster recovery plan, switching its operations to a redundant data center located in a different geographical region, allowing its online store to remain accessible to customers with minimal downtime. Hypothetical scenario. A critical infrastructure provider, such as an energy grid operator, develops a comprehensive business continuity plan that includes redundant control systems, emergency power generators, and a backup communication network to ensure continuous energy supply even during a severe cyberattack or natural disaster. End-user education. This addresses the most unpredictable cybersecurity factor, human error. Training users to identify suspicious requests, choose strong passwords, and avoid risky behaviors is critical for maintaining security. Real-world example. A large corporation conducts mandatory annual cybersecurity awareness training for all employees, covering topics like phishing identification, secure password practices, and the risks of clicking suspicious links or downloading untrusted attachments. Hypothetical scenario. A small business implements regular simulated phishing campaigns where employees receive fake phishing emails. Those who click on the malicious links are provided with immediate retraining and additional resources to improve their vigilance against future attacks. Importance of cybersecurity. Cybersecurity is critical in the modern digital landscape for numerous reasons, impacting individuals, businesses, and nations alike. Its importance stems from the pervasive nature of digital technology and the growing sophistication of cyber threats. Protecting personal data. Individuals frequently share personal information online, from banking details to social media profiles. Without robust cybersecurity, this data is vulnerable to theft and misuse. Real-world example. Identity theft often results from personal data breaches. When a social media platform suffers a data breach, personal information like names, email addresses, and phone numbers can be exposed, leading to fraudulent activities or targeted scams against affected users. Hypothetical scenario. A student uses an unsecured public Wi-Fi network to log into their university portal. An attacker monitoring the network could intercept their login credentials, gaining access to their academic records, financial aid information, and other sensitive data. Safeguarding business operations and reputation for businesses. A cyberattack can lead to significant financial losses, operational disruption, damage to reputation, and legal penalties. Downtime, data recovery costs, and potential lawsuits can be devastating. Real-world example. In 2017, the WannaCry ransomware attack disrupted businesses and organizations globally, including the UK's National Health Service, NHS. The attack encrypted critical systems, halting operations, delaying patient care, and costing millions in recovery efforts and lost productivity. Hypothetical scenario. A cloud storage provider experiences a major data breach where customer files are accessed by unauthorized parties. This not only leads to significant financial penalties due to data protection regulations, but also results in a mass exodus of customers who lose trust in the provider's ability to protect their sensitive information, severely damaging their market position. Ensuring national security and critical infrastructure protection. Cyberattacks can target critical national infrastructure, such as power grids, water treatment plants, and transportation systems, with potentially catastrophic consequences. State-sponsored hacking groups often aim to disrupt or espionage on other nations. Real-world example. The Stuxnet worm, discovered in 2010, was designed to sabotage Iran's nuclear program by targeting industrial control systems, SCADA, of centrifuges, causing physical damage. This demonstrated the potential for cyber warfare to have real-world physical impacts. Hypothetical scenario. A foreign state-sponsored actor launches a sophisticated cyberattack against a nation's air traffic control system, aiming to disrupt civilian flights and military air operations. Such an attack could lead to widespread travel chaos, economic losses, and pose a severe threat to public safety and national defense. Exercises 1. Scenario analysis. Small business network. A small marketing firm with 15 employees uses a single Wi-Fi network. Cloud-based productivity tools like Google Workspace and personal laptops for work. They recently started using a shared external hard drive for client project backups. Identify at least 3 cybersecurity vulnerabilities present in their setup and suggest a specific, modern cybersecurity component from the core components of cybersecurity section that would address each vulnerability. 2. Impact assessment. Healthcare data breach. Imagine a medium-sized hospital experiences a cyber attack that results in the theft of 10,000 patient records, including names, addresses, social security numbers, and medical histories. Describe how this incident could impact the hospital in terms of damage to reputation, financial implications, operational disruption, legal and regulatory consequences, which importance of cybersecurity aspect. For example, protecting personal data or safeguarding business operations, is most directly impacted, and why. 3. Critical infrastructure protection. Water treatment plant. Consider a city's water treatment plant that relies on computer-controlled systems for filtering, chemical treatment, and distribution. If this system were compromised by a sophisticated cyber attack, what specific risks would arise related to public health and safety, operational continuity, environmental impact? Explain how robust cybersecurity measures, particularly in the realm of operational security and network security, would mitigate these risks. Real-world application. The modern landscape is riddled with examples that underscore the urgent need for robust cybersecurity. Consider the pervasive nature of ransomware, a type of malicious software that encrypts a victim's files, demanding a ransom payment for their release. In May 2021, Colonial Pipeline, a major fuel pipeline operator in the United States, was hit by a ransomware attack. The attackers, a group known as DarkSide, gained access to Colonial Pipeline's computer systems and encrypted data, forcing the company to shut down its operations to contain the threat. This immediate shutdown impacted fuel supply across the southeastern United States, leading to widespread panic buying, fuel shortages, and significant economic disruption. The company ultimately paid a ransom of $4.4 million in cryptocurrency to regain access to its systems. This incident vividly illustrates the importance of cybersecurity in several ways. Safeguarding business operations and reputation. The operational shutdown caused massive financial losses for Colonial Pipeline and severe damage to its reputation for reliability. The disruption ripple effect impacted countless businesses and individuals reliant on their fuel supply. Ensuring national security and critical infrastructure protection. As an operator of critical infrastructure, the attack on Colonial Pipeline demonstrated how cyber threats can directly impact national security and essential services, highlighting the vulnerability of physical systems to digital compromise. Protection of data. While not primarily a data theft incident, the encryption of internal systems data prevented the company from operating, effectively holding their operational data hostage. The Colonial Pipeline attack was not just a data breach. It was an attack that leveraged digital vulnerabilities to cause real-world physical consequences, emphasizing that cybersecurity extends beyond mere data protection to encompass the very functionality of our interconnected world. Effective cybersecurity, encompassing network segmentation, robust access controls, incident response planning, and employee training, could have either prevented the initial breach or significantly limited its impact. Conclusion and next steps. This lesson established a foundational understanding of what cybersecurity entails, defining its core components, and elaborating on its critical importance across personal, business, and national contexts. We explored various facets, from securing networks and applications to ensuring operational continuity and educating end users. The examples provided illustrated how cyber threats manifest and why proactive defense is indispensable in our digitally dependent society. Building on this understanding, the next lesson, understanding the CIA Triad, confidentiality, integrity, availability, will delve into the fundamental principles that underpin all cybersecurity efforts. The CIA Triad provides a framework for assessing and prioritizing security measures, which is essential for developing effective cybersecurity strategies. Understanding the CIA Triad. Confidentiality, integrity, availability. The CIA Triad is a foundational model in cybersecurity that outlines the three core security goals that organizations strive to achieve when protecting information and systems: confidentiality, integrity, and availability. These three principles are interconnected and serve as a guide for developing security policies, controls, and architectures. Understanding the CIA Triad is essential for identifying potential risks, assessing vulnerabilities, and implementing effective safeguards to protect digital assets. Confidentiality refers to the principle of preventing unauthorized disclosure of information. It ensures that data is accessible only to individuals or systems that have been granted explicit permission. This concept involves protecting sensitive information from being seen, accessed, or obtained by unauthorized parties. Breaches of confidentiality can lead to severe consequences, including financial losses, reputational damage, legal penalties, and competitive disadvantages. Mechanisms for ensuring confidentiality. Several mechanisms are employed to uphold confidentiality. Encryption, the process of converting information into a code to prevent unauthorized access. Encrypted data can only be decrypted and read by someone with the correct key. Access controls, restricting access to information and resources based on user identity and roles. This includes authentication, verifying user identity, and authorization, determining what a user can do. Data masking, hiding original data with random or scrambled characters, especially for non-production environments like testing, to protect sensitive information while allowing functional testing. Physical security, protecting the physical locations where data is stored to prevent unauthorized access to hardware that contains sensitive information. Examples of confidentiality. 1. Real-world example. 1. Banking transactions. When a customer performs an online banking transaction, their account number, balance, and transaction details must remain confidential. The bank uses encryption, for example TLS and SSL for communication over the Internet, to secure the data transmitted between the customer's browser and the bank's servers. Additionally, strong access controls ensure that only the authenticated customer can view their specific account details, and even bank employees have restricted access based on their roles and duties. For example, a customer service representative might see transaction history but not be able to initiate a transfer without further authorization. 2. Real-world example. 2. Healthcare records. Patient health information (FI) is highly confidential. Hospitals and clinics must ensure that only authorized medical staff directly involved in a patient's care can access their records. This is achieved through strict access controls, multi-factor authentication for electronic health record (EHR) systems, and secure network segmentation. For instance, a doctor can access a patient's entire medical history, while a billing clerk might only access demographic and insurance information, and a research scientist might only have access to anonymized data sets to protect patient identities. 3. Hypothetical scenario. Consider a company developing a new, groundbreaking product. The design specifications, research data, and marketing strategies for this product are extremely sensitive. If a competitor were to gain access to this information, it could severely undermine the company's market position. To maintain confidentiality, the company might implement robust encryption for all design documents stored on servers, strict need-to-know access policies limiting who can view specific parts of the project, and secure virtual private networks, VPNs, for remote employees accessing project files. Employee training on phishing and social engineering also helps prevent unintentional disclosure. Integrity refers to maintaining the accuracy, completeness, and consistency of data throughout its entire lifecycle. It ensures that information has not been altered or destroyed in an unauthorized manner. Data integrity is crucial because unreliable or tampered data can lead to incorrect decisions, financial losses, and legal issues. Maintaining integrity means protecting data from both intentional malicious modification and unintentional accidental changes. Mechanisms for ensuring integrity. Common mechanisms to preserve data integrity include hashing, a process that converts an input or key into a fixed-size encrypted value. If even a single character in the original data changes, the hash value will be completely different, indicating tampering. Digital signatures, cryptographic mechanisms used to verify the authenticity and integrity of digital documents or messages. They confirm the sender's identity and that the data has not been altered since it was signed. Version control, systems that track changes to documents or code over time, allowing for rollback to previous versions if corruption or unauthorized changes occur. Checksums, a small-sized datum computed from a block of digital data for the purpose of detecting errors that may have been introduced during transmission or storage. Access controls, while primarily for confidentiality, granular access controls can also prevent unauthorized modification of data by restricting write permissions. Examples of integrity: 1. Real-world example 1. Software updates. When you download a software update from a vendor, it is critical that the update package has not been tampered with during transmission. Software vendors often provide a hash, for example an MD5 or SHA-256 checksum, of the original package. Users can compute the hash of the downloaded file and compare it to the vendor's provided hash. If the hashes match, it confirms the integrity of the downloaded file, ensuring no malicious code was injected and no corruption occurred. Digital signatures on the software executable also verify its authenticity and integrity. 2. Real-world example 2. Financial transactions in financial systems. Ensuring the integrity of transaction records is paramount. When a payment is processed, the amount, sender, and receiver must remain accurate. Databases use transactional integrity features like ACID properties, atomicity, consistency, isolation, and durability to ensure that transactions are either fully completed or fully rolled back if an error occurs, preventing partial updates. For example, if funds are debited from one account but fail to be credited to another, the system must revert the debit to maintain data integrity. 3. Hypothetical scenario. Imagine a scientific research lab conducting an experiment with critical temperature and pressure readings over several months. If these readings were to be accidentally altered, for example due to a software glitch or human error during manual data entry, or maliciously manipulated, for example by a competitor trying to discredit the research, the integrity of the entire experiment would be compromised. To maintain integrity, the lab uses automated sensor data collection with built-in validation checks, write-once immutable storage for raw data logs, and digital signatures for datasets before analysis. Any manual data entry is double-checked by a separate technician and recorded in an auditable log. Availability refers to the principle that authorized users should be able to access information and resources when they need them. This means that systems, applications, and data must be operational and accessible to legitimate users without undue delay. Availability is about ensuring continuous access to services and information, which is critical for business operations and user satisfaction. Disruptions to availability can range from temporary slowdowns to complete outages, often leading to significant financial losses and reputational damage. Mechanisms for ensuring availability. Key mechanisms to ensure availability include redundancy, duplicating critical system components, for example servers, network links, and power supplies, so that if one fails, a backup can immediately take over. Disaster recovery planning, DRP, a documented process that outlines how an organization will recover its IT systems and data in the event of a disaster. Business continuity planning, BCP, a broader plan that ensures an organization can continue to operate critical business functions during and after a disaster. Load balancing, distributing network traffic across multiple servers to prevent any single server from becoming overloaded and to improve overall system responsiveness and uptime. Regular backups, creating copies of data and storing them in secure, separate locations, allowing for data restoration in case of loss or corruption. Fault tolerance, designing systems to continue operating correctly even if one or more components fail. Examples of availability. 1. Real-world example. 1. E-commerce website. An online retail website must be available 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, especially during peak shopping seasons like holidays. If the website goes down, customers cannot make purchases, directly impacting revenue. To ensure high availability, such websites typically employ server clusters and load balancers, distributing incoming web traffic across multiple web servers so that if one server fails, others can handle the requests. Redundant network connections, multiple internet service providers, ISPs, and network paths to ensure connectivity even if one link goes down. Geographically dispersed data centers, replicating the entire infrastructure in different physical locations. If a natural disaster or power outage affects one data center, traffic can be redirected to another. 2. Real-world example. 2. Emergency services. Communication systems for emergency services. For example, 911 and 112 dispatch and police radio networks must have extremely high availability. Any outage could have life-threatening consequences. These systems are built with multiple layers of redundancy, including redundant power supplies, uninterruptible power supplies, UPS and backup generators, multiple communication channels, satellite, cellular, and landline backups. Failover systems, automatic switching to backup systems if primary systems fail, often with minimal human intervention. Robust physical infrastructure, hardened facilities resistant to natural disasters and physical attacks. 3. Hypothetical scenario. Consider an autonomous vehicle company that relies on real-time data from its fleet of cars for navigation, safety, and operational control. If the cloud platform hosting this critical data becomes unavailable, the vehicles might lose their ability to navigate, receive safety updates, or even operate, posing a significant safety risk. To ensure availability, the company would implement a highly distributed cloud architecture across multiple availability zones and regions, utilize content delivery networks, CDNs, for static assets, and implement rigorous disaster recovery plans with automated failover mechanisms. They would also monitor system health continuously and have dedicated incident response teams ready to address any availability issues immediately. Exercises. 1. CIA Triad identification. For each scenario below, identify which principle or principles of the CIA Triad, confidentiality, integrity, and availability, are most directly being addressed or violated. Explain your reasoning. A hacker gains access to a company's customer database and leaks credit card numbers online. B. During a data transfer, a network error causes several bytes of a critical financial report to be corrupted, leading to incorrect totals. C. A distributed denial of service, DDoS Attack overwhelms a news website, making it inaccessible to readers for several hours. D. An employee accidentally deletes a critical project file, but it is restored from a backup within minutes. E. A hospital implements strict authentication protocols, requiring doctors to use a unique username, strong password, and a smart card to access patient records. 2. Applying CIA principles. You are designing the security for an online learning platform where students can view course materials, submit assignments, and take quizzes. For each of the following components, describe one measure you would implement to ensure confidentiality, one for integrity, and one for availability. Student grades database, confidentiality, integrity, availability. B. Course lecture videos, confidentiality, integrity, availability. C. Assignment submission portal, confidentiality, integrity, availability. 3. Prioritizing the CIA Triad in some situations. One principle of the CIA Triad might take precedence over another. Consider the following systems and discuss which CIA principle would likely be the highest priority for each and why. A missile launch control system. A public-facing corporate website displaying company news. See a secure messaging app designed for journalists. Real-world application. The CIA Triad forms the bedrock of modern cybersecurity frameworks and strategies. Organizations across all industries rely on these principles to guide their security investments and operational decisions. When evaluating new technologies or designing security architectures, security professionals constantly refer to how these solutions contribute to maintaining confidentiality, integrity, and availability. For instance, a cloud service provider advertises its security features by detailing how data is encrypted at rest and in transit, confidentiality, how data integrity checks are performed during storage and retrieval, integrity, and how redundant infrastructure ensures high uptime, availability. The CIA Triad also plays a critical role in understanding the impact of cyber incidents. When analyzing an attack, security teams classify the incident's impact based on which principles of the CIA Triad were compromised. For example, a data breach might primarily be a confidentiality incident, while a ransomware attack often impacts availability by encrypting files and potentially integrity, if files are corrupted during the encryption and decryption process, or if the attacker modifies data before encryption. A sophisticated attacker might achieve all three: stealing data, confidentiality, modifying records, integrity, and then deleting logs to hide their tracks, impacting the availability of audit trails. Understanding these core concepts allows security professionals to articulate risks, define security requirements, and measure the effectiveness of their security controls in a standardized way. As we delve into threats and vulnerabilities, remember that every attack aims to disrupt one or more of these fundamental security attributes. The CIA Triad provides a fundamental framework for understanding the core goals of cybersecurity. Confidentiality ensures sensitive data is kept private, integrity maintains the accuracy and trustworthiness of data, and availability guarantees that systems and data are accessible when needed. As you progress, these concepts will serve as a constant reference point for evaluating security measures and understanding the impact of cyber threats. In the next lesson, we will explore key cybersecurity threats and vulnerabilities, which directly challenge the principles of the CIA Triad. Key cybersecurity threats and vulnerabilities. Cybersecurity threats are malicious acts that aim to damage or gain unauthorized access to computer systems, networks, or data. Vulnerabilities are weaknesses in a system that can be exploited by these threats. Understanding the interplay between threats and vulnerabilities is fundamental to protecting digital assets. Key cybersecurity threats. Cybersecurity threats are diverse and constantly evolving, ranging from financially motivated attacks to state-sponsored espionage. These threats exploit various weaknesses in technology, processes, and human behavior. Malware, short for malicious software, is a broad category of software designed to disrupt, damage, or gain unauthorized access to a computer system. Malware can spread through various means, including infected email attachments, malicious websites, or compromised software. Viruses. Viruses are malicious programs that attach themselves to legitimate programs or documents and spread to other computers when those programs or documents are executed. They often modify or delete data and can significantly slow down system performance. Real-world example. The Stuxnet virus, discovered in 2010, was designed to target industrial control systems, specifically centrifuges used for uranium enrichment. It demonstrated the potential for malware to cause physical damage to infrastructure. Hypothetical scenario. An employee downloads an infected document from a seemingly legitimate internal email, and the virus subsequently spreads to other workstations on the internal network, encrypting shared files. Worms. Worms are self-replicating malware that spreads across networks without needing to attach to other programs. They exploit network vulnerabilities to propagate from one system to another. Real-world example. The WannaCry ransomware worm in 2017 exploited a vulnerability in Microsoft Windows, Eternal Blue, to rapidly encrypt data on affected systems worldwide, demanding ransom payments. Trojans. Trojan horses, are malicious programs disguised as legitimate software. Users are tricked into installing them, and once installed, they can perform various malicious activities, such as creating backdoors, stealing data, or installing other malware. Trojans do not self-replicate like viruses or worms. Real-world example. Imitet, initially a banking Trojan, evolved into a modular threat capable of delivering other malware like ransomware. It often spread through malicious email attachments or links disguised as invoices or shipping notifications. Phishing and social engineering. Social engineering refers to manipulative techniques that exploit human psychological vulnerabilities to trick individuals into divulging confidential information or performing actions that compromise security. Phishing is a common form of social engineering. Phishing. Phishing attacks use deceptive communications, often emails or text messages, to trick recipients into revealing sensitive information, such as usernames, passwords, credit card details, or clicking on malicious links. The attacker impersonates a trustworthy entity. Real-world example. Spear phishing attacks against Twitter in 2020 saw attackers gain access to internal tools by targeting employees with highly convincing fake login pages, leading to the compromise of high-profile accounts. Hypothetical scenario. A user receives an email that appears to be from their bank, stating their account has been locked due to suspicious activity, and asking them to click a link to verify their details. The link leads to a fake website designed to steal credentials. Spear phishing, a more targeted form of phishing where attackers tailor their messages to specific individuals or organizations, often using information gathered about their targets to make the attack more convincing. Whaling. A type of spear phishing attack specifically targets high-profile individuals, such as CEOs or executives within an organization, due to the significant access and data they typically possess. Pretexting. Creating a fabricated scenario, pretext, to engage a target in a way that encourages them to divulge information or perform an action they would not normally. The attacker typically pretends to be someone else, like an IT support person or a government official. Real-world example. Attackers calling employees and posing as IT support to get them to reveal login credentials or install remote access software. Denial of service, DoS, and distributed denial of service, DDoS attacks. DoS and DDoS attacks aim to make a service or resource unavailable to its legitimate users by overwhelming it with traffic or requests. Denial of service, DoS. A single source attempts to flood a target system with traffic or requests, consuming its resources and preventing legitimate users from accessing it. Real-world example. In 2000, several high-profile websites, including Yahoo and Amazon, were hit by DoS attacks that rendered them inaccessible for hours. Distributed denial of service, DDoS. An attack where multiple compromised systems, often referred to as a botnet, are used to launch a coordinated attack against a single target. The distributed nature makes it harder to block the attack by simply filtering traffic from a single source. Real-world example. The Mirai botnet in 2016 leveraged unsecured IoT devices, like security cameras and DVRs, to launch massive DDoS attacks against websites and DNS providers, including Dyn, which impacted access to many popular internet services. Hypothetical scenario. A competitor hires a cybercriminal group to launch a DDoS attack against an online retailer during their peak sales period, causing their website to crash and lose millions in potential revenue. Ransomware is a type of malicious software that encrypts a victim's files or locks their computer system, then demands a ransom payment, typically in cryptocurrency, for decryption or access restoration. Real-world example. The Colonial pipeline attack in 2021 involved dark-side ransomware, which led to the shutdown of critical infrastructure supplying fuel to much of the southeastern United States, causing widespread fuel shortages. Hypothetical scenario. A small business employee opens a malicious email attachment, leading to their entire file server being encrypted. The attackers demand a ransom to unlock the files, halting the business operations until resolved. Key cybersecurity vulnerabilities. Vulnerabilities are weaknesses or flaws in a system, application, or process that a threat can exploit to gain unauthorized access, cause damage, or disrupt operations. Identifying and mitigating vulnerabilities is a crucial aspect of cybersecurity. Software vulnerabilities. Software vulnerabilities are flaws or bugs in code that can be exploited by attackers. These are often introduced during the development process. Missing security patches. Software vendors regularly release patches to fix known security vulnerabilities. Systems that do not have these patches applied remain susceptible to attacks exploiting those vulnerabilities. Real-world example. The WannaCry ransomware attack, mentioned earlier, extensively exploited the Eternal Blue vulnerability in unpatched Windows systems. Organizations that had applied the relevant Microsoft patch were largely protected. Hypothetical scenario. A critical web server is running an outdated version of its operating system and web server software, both of which have publicly known vulnerabilities. An attacker scans the network, identifies these vulnerabilities, and exploits them to gain control of the server. Improper error handling. When software does not properly handle errors, it can sometimes reveal sensitive information like system paths, database queries, or internal logic to an attacker or lead to system crashes that can be exploited. Injection flaws, for example SQL injection and command injection, occur when an attacker can send malicious code or commands as part of user input to an application, tricking the application into executing that code. Real-world example, SQL injection. Many data breaches have occurred due to SQL injection, where attackers insert malicious SQL statements into input fields to access, modify, or delete data from a database. In 2014, a major breach at a large retailer was attributed to an SQL injection vulnerability in their payment system. Broken authentication and session management. Weaknesses in how applications verify user identities and manage user sessions can allow attackers to impersonate legitimate users or gain unauthorized access to accounts. Real-world example. If a website uses easily guessable session IDs or does not properly invalidate session tokens after logout, an attacker might be able to hijack a legitimate user session. Configuration vulnerabilities. These arise from misconfigurations in hardware, software, or network settings, rather than flaws in the code itself. Default passwords and weak passwords. Many devices and software come with default administrative passwords, for example, admin or password. If these are not changed or strong passwords are not enforced, attackers can easily gain access. Real-world example. The Mirai botnet primarily grew by scanning for IoT devices with default or weak credentials and then installing its malicious software. Open ports and services. Unnecessary network ports left open on firewalls or systems can expose services to the internet that should only be accessible internally, creating potential entry points for attackers. Hypothetical scenario. A database server is mistakenly configured to be accessible directly from the internet, rather than being behind a firewall and accessible only from internal application servers. An attacker discovers the open port and attempts to brute force the database login. Improper permissions. Incorrectly configured file or directory permissions can allow unauthorized users to read, write, or execute sensitive files. Real-world example. Many web applications have configuration files that contain database credentials. If these files have overly permissive access rights, an attacker who gains limited access to the server might be able to read these credentials. Human vulnerabilities. Humans are often considered the weakest link in the security chain due to susceptibility to social engineering and errors. Lack of security awareness. Employees who are not trained in cybersecurity best practices are more likely to fall for phishing scams, use weak passwords, or accidentally expose sensitive information. Real-world example. Many data breaches begin with an employee clicking a malicious link or opening an infected attachment in a phishing email because they were not trained to recognize such threats. Insider threats. Employees, contractors, or former employees who have legitimate access to systems can intentionally or unintentionally misuse their access to cause harm, steal data, or introduce vulnerabilities. Hypothetical scenario. A disgruntled employee, before leaving the company, intentionally deletes critical files from a server, exploiting their administrative access to sabotage the organization. Practical examples and demonstrations understanding these threats and vulnerabilities is paramount. Consider a scenario involving a hypothetical small online retail business, Gadget Zone Incorporated. Scenario 1. Phishing and software vulnerability. Gadget Zone Incorporated's marketing department uses a popular email marketing platform. An employee receives a very convincing spear phishing email appearing to be from the platform's support team, asking them to re-authenticate their account due to a security upgrade. The email includes Gadget Zone's logo and even references the employee's name and department. The employee clicks the link, which leads to a fake login page. Unbeknownst to them, the attacker also exploits a known unpatched vulnerability in the employee's web browser, a software vulnerability to install a keylogger. Threat: spear phishing, social engineering to steal credentials and malware keylogger for persistent data theft. Vulnerability: human vulnerability, lack of security awareness leading the employee to fall for the phishing attempt. Software vulnerability: the unpatched web browser, allowing the keylogger to be installed. Outcome: the attacker obtains the employee's email marketing platform credentials and potentially other login information typed while the keylogger is active. They can then send malicious emails to Gadget Zone's customer base or access other internal systems. Scenario 2. Ransomware and configuration vulnerability. Gadget Zone Incorporated operates an internal file server for sharing documents. Due to an oversight during server setup, the server's administrator account still uses the default, easily guessable password, admin123, and it is directly exposed to the internet because of a misconfigured firewall rule, open port. An attacker scans the internet for systems with this particular open port, identifies Gadget Zone's server, and successfully guesses the default password. Once inside, they deploy ransomware, encrypting all shared documents and demanding a ransom. Threat: ransomware for data encryption and extortion. Vulnerability: configuration vulnerability, default and weak password on the administrator account. Configuration vulnerability: misconfigured firewall with an open port exposing the server directly to the internet. Outcome: Gadget Zone Incorporated loses access to critical business documents, impacting operations. they face a decision: pay the ransom with no guarantee of data recovery or attempt to restore from backups if available and recent. Exercises and practice activities. 1. Threat vulnerability matching for each of the following scenarios. Identify the primary cybersecurity threat and the vulnerability being exploited. A company's website experiences slow performance and crashes repeatedly after being overwhelmed by traffic from thousands of different IP addresses. Threat vulnerability. An employee downloads a free productivity tool from an unofficial website which secretly installs a backdoor, allowing an attacker to remotely access their computer. Threat vulnerability. A publicly facing web application has a known vulnerability in its older version. The IT team has not applied the vendor's security patch released 6 months ago. An attacker exploits this flaw to gain unauthorized access to the application's database. Threat vulnerability. 2. Vulnerability identification. You are conducting a basic security review for a small office network. List at least 3 potential vulnerabilities you might look for, based on the concepts covered, and briefly explain why each is a vulnerability. Email analysis. Describe the characteristics of a typical phishing email trying to steal bank credentials. What specific elements would you look for to determine if it is a scam? Real-world application. The NotPetya ransomware attack of 2017 serves as a stark example of how combining several threats and exploiting critical vulnerabilities can lead to widespread and devastating impact. While we will cover NotPetya in more detail later, for now, consider these aspects. Malware, wiper disguised as ransomware. NotPetya initially masqueraded as ransomware demanding payment, but its primary function was data destruction, a wiper. Exploiting software vulnerabilities. NotPetya leveraged the Eternal Blue exploit, a Windows SMB vulnerability, to spread rapidly across networks, similar to how WannaCry spread. It also used Eternal Romance, another SMB vulnerability. Exploiting configuration vulnerabilities. Many systems were vulnerable because they had not applied the security patches released by Microsoft months prior. Furthermore, it used legitimate administrative tools like PsExec and WMIC once inside a network, exploiting weak internal network segmentation and potentially weak administrative credentials. Lack of security awareness. While NotPetya's initial infection vector was primarily through a compromised accounting software update mechanism, the rapid internal spread highlighted organizations' inability to quickly contain threats due to insufficient patching and network hygiene. NotPetya demonstrated that even large organizations with significant resources can be severely impacted when they have unpatched systems and a lack of defense in depth, illustrating the critical importance of understanding and addressing both threats and vulnerabilities. The attack quickly spread globally, impacting critical infrastructure, shipping companies, and various businesses, causing billions in damages. This lesson covered the fundamental concepts of cybersecurity threats, including various types of malware, social engineering tactics like phishing, denial-of-service attacks, and ransomware. It also explored key vulnerabilities such as software flaws, like missing patches and injection flaws, configuration weaknesses, default passwords and open ports, and human factors, lack of awareness. Understanding these concepts provides a foundational vocabulary for discussing cybersecurity risks. The next lesson will expand on these ideas by introducing common attack vectors and types, illustrating how attackers combine threats and exploit vulnerabilities to achieve their objectives. Common attack vectors and attack types. An attack vector is the specific path or method a threat actor uses to gain unauthorized access to a system, while an attack type describes the actual technique or exploit deployed once that access is established. Distinguishing between these allows security professionals to distinguish between the how we got in and the what we did once inside. Common attack vectors are the gateways. If a building is the system, the attack vector is the specific door window, or delivery dock left unlocked. Phishing and social engineering. This remains the most prevalent vector. It relies on human fallibility rather than technical flaws. An attacker sends a deceptive email, spear phishing, or initiates a voice call, vishing, to trick an authorized user into revealing credentials or executing a malicious payload. Unpatched software and vulnerabilities. Every piece of software contains code, and code contains bugs. When a vulnerability is discovered, a CVE, there is a race between the vendor releasing a patch and the attacker developing an exploit. Systems running outdated, unpatched software are essentially offering an open, known path for entry. Misconfigurations. This is a self-inflicted wound. It includes default passwords left on network hardware, S3 buckets left open to the public, or administrative interfaces exposed to the internet. This vector does not require hacking in the traditional sense. It requires only discovery. Supply chain compromise. Attackers target a third-party vendor that has legitimate, trusted access to the target organization. By compromising a software update server or a managed service provider, MSP, the attacker rides in on the back of a trusted connection. Common attack types. Once the perimeter is breached via an attack vector, the attacker executes an attack type to achieve their objective, typically theft, disruption, or encryption. Malware, malicious software. This is a broad category. Ransomware encrypts files, rendering them unusable until a payment is made. Spyware and keyloggers silently records user activity and keystrokes to harvest passwords. Trojans disguises malicious code as legitimate software to establish a backdoor. Man-in-the-middle, mid-M. The attacker intercepts communication between two parties. In a classic network mid-M, the attacker positions themselves on the same network, like a rogue Wi-Fi hotspot, and captures traffic in transit before forwarding it, allowing them to read unencrypted data or inject malicious scripts. Denial of service, DoS and DDoS. The goal here is availability. An attacker floods a server, network, or service with more traffic than it can process. A distributed denial of service, DDoS, attack uses a botnet, thousands of compromised devices, to overwhelm the target from multiple geographic locations simultaneously. SQL injection, SQLI, an attack against web applications that communicate with databases. If input fields are not sanitized, an attacker can input SQL commands. For example, by typing OR1 equals 1 into a login form, an attacker might trick the database into returning all records, bypassing authentication entirely. Understanding the core elements of cybersecurity threats. Cybersecurity is built on the interaction between three fundamental components: humans, processes, and systems. Every security event, whether a minor incident or a major breach, can be traced back to one or more of these elements. Understanding how they connect is essential to identifying, preventing, and responding to threats effectively. The human element is often the most unpredictable and vulnerable component in cybersecurity. Users, employees, and even administrators can unintentionally introduce risk through actions such as clicking on malicious links, using weak passwords, or falling victim to social engineering tactics. Attackers frequently target humans because they are easier to manipulate than hardened systems. Processes define how security is implemented, managed, and enforced within an organization. These include policies, procedures, and operational workflows. Weak or poorly defined processes, such as lack of patch management, inadequate access control policies, or failure to monitor systems, create gaps that attackers can exploit. Systems include hardware, software, networks, and applications. These are the technical assets that store, process, and transmit data. Vulnerabilities within systems, whether due to outdated software, misconfigurations, or design flaws, serve as entry points for attackers. Types of impact when these elements are compromised. The consequences typically fall into three major categories: theft, unauthorized access, and exfiltration of sensitive data, such as credentials, financial information, or intellectual property. Disruption, interference with normal operations, including system downtime, service outages, or denial of access. Encryption, locking, or rendering data inaccessible, commonly seen in ransomware attacks where attackers demand payment for decryption. Threat actors and attack execution. At the center of every cyber incident is a threat actor, an individual or group with intent and capability to exploit vulnerabilities. Threat actors can range from individual hackers and cybercriminal groups to insider threats and nation-state attackers. Each operates with different motivations, including financial gain, espionage, disruption, or ideological purposes. Attack vector is the path or method used to gain unauthorized access to a system. Common examples include phishing, deceptive emails or messages designed to trick users into revealing sensitive information. Misconfiguration, improper system setup, such as open ports or weak access controls, exposing systems to attack. Unpatched vulnerability, known software flaws that remain unaddressed, allowing attackers to exploit them. Malicious payload, harmful code delivered into a system to execute unauthorized actions. Common attack types. Once access is gained, attackers execute specific types of attacks depending on their objectives. Credential harvesting, stealing usernames and passwords to gain further access into systems. Distributed denial of service, DDoS, overwhelming systems or networks with traffic to disrupt availability. Ransomware, encrypting data and demanding payment for its release. Backdoor installation, creating hidden access points to maintain long-term control over a compromised system. Bringing it all together, cybersecurity is not about isolated events. It is about understanding the chain of interaction. A threat actor identifies a weakness in a human, process, or system, uses an attack vector to exploit that weakness, delivers a malicious payload, and executes an attack type that results in theft, disruption, or encryption. By understanding this full cycle, cybersecurity professionals can move from reactive defense to proactive protection, anticipating threats before they materialize and building systems that are resilient by design. Distinguishing vectors from types. Understanding the relationship between these concepts is critical for building a defensive posture. You patch vulnerabilities to close vectors. You deploy EDR, endpoint detection and response, to identify and block the attack types that occur after a breach. Mapping real-world cybersecurity scenarios. Understanding cybersecurity becomes clearer when we connect theory to real-world situations. Each incident follows a pattern. A weakness is identified, an entry point is used, and a specific attack is executed. The scenarios below illustrate how different attack vectors lead to specific attack types and outcomes. Scenario 1. Phishing leading to malware infection. A user receives what appears to be a legitimate invoice via email. Trusting the message, the user clicks on the attachment or link. Behind the scenes, this action executes a hidden malicious program. Attack vector, phishing attack type, malware Trojan. In this case, the attacker exploits human trust. The phishing email acts as the delivery mechanism, while the Trojan installs itself silently, often creating backdoor access or stealing data. Scenario 2. Misconfigured server allowing unauthorized access. A server is deployed with an open port and no authentication mechanism in place. This oversight creates a direct entry point for attackers scanning the network. Attack vector, misconfiguration attack type, unauthorized access here. The vulnerability is not caused by complex hacking techniques, but by improper setup. Attackers simply discover the exposed service and gain access without needing to bypass security controls. Scenario 3. Vulnerable web application exploited via SQL injection. A web application allows users to input search queries, but fails to properly validate or sanitize that input. An attacker injects malicious SQL code into the search field. Attack vector, unpatched vulnerability attack type. SQL injection, this allows the attacker to manipulate the database, retrieving, modifying, or deleting sensitive information. It highlights the importance of secure coding practices and regular patching. Scenario 4. Distributed Denial of Service (DDoS) attack on an e-commerce platform. An attacker uses a botnet, a network of compromised devices, to flood an online store with massive amounts of traffic. The system becomes overwhelmed and unable to serve legitimate users. Attack vector, exposed network interface attack type. DDoS in this scenario, availability is the primary target. The attacker does not need to breach the system. Simply overwhelming it is enough to disrupt operations and cause financial loss. Key insight: each of these scenarios demonstrates a critical pattern in cybersecurity. A weakness, human error, misconfiguration, or vulnerability is exploited through an attack vector, which enables a specific attack type to achieve the attacker's objective. Recognizing these patterns is essential. It allows cybersecurity professionals to anticipate threats, strengthen defenses, and respond effectively before small weaknesses turn into major incidents. Summary: attack vectors describe the delivery mechanism, and attack types describe the payload or behavior. Robust security requires addressing both, minimizing your attack surface, reducing vectors, and implementing detective controls, identifying active attack types. This distinction is vital when we later move into the kill chain, where we track these steps across the life cycle of an intrusion. Introduction to the cybersecurity kill chain. The cybersecurity kill chain is a systematic model that maps the stages of a cyberattack, from the initial reconnaissance to the final impact. Developed by Lockheed Martin and inspired by military target engagement cycles, the framework allows security professionals to understand how an adversary operates so they can break the chain at any point before the objective is achieved. The 7 stages of an attack. Every sophisticated attack follows a repeatable progression. If you can stop the attacker at any one of these 7 stages, you effectively neutralize the threat. 1. Reconnaissance. The attacker gathers information about the target. This isn't just technical scanning. It includes open-source intelligence (OSINT) gathering. They might look for employee email addresses on LinkedIn, identify the company's technology stack via DNS records, or monitor job postings to see which security tools they should prepare to bypass. 2. Weaponization. The attacker creates a malicious payload. They couple an exploit code that takes advantage of a vulnerability with a backdoor, a mechanism to maintain access, into a deliverable package, such as a weaponized PDF, an infected Excel macro, or a malicious script embedded in a legitimate software update. 3. Delivery. The payload is transmitted to the victim. Common vectors include phishing emails, watering hole attacks, infecting a website the target is known to visit, or the physical insertion of a compromised USB drive. 4. Exploitation. The weaponized code triggers. This stage occurs on the target system. The exploit triggers a vulnerability in an operating system, an application, or even the human user, such as convincing an employee to click enable content on a macro, allowing the code to execute in the system's memory. 5. Installation. Once the exploit executes, the attacker installs a persistent mechanism. This is often a remote access Trojan rat or a rootkit. The goal here is to ensure that even if the system reboots or the user logs out, the attacker maintains their foothold in the network. 6. Command and control. C2. The compromised host establishes a communication channel back to the attacker's infrastructure. The malware phones home to receive instructions. Because the attacker is now connected to the network from the inside, they can issue commands to exfiltrate data or move laterally to other systems. 7. Actions on objectives. The final stage is the attacker fulfilling their goal. This could be data theft, exfiltration, the encryption of files for a ransomware demand, or the total destruction of systems to mask their tracks. Strategic disruption, breaking the attack before it succeeds. One of the most powerful insights in cybersecurity is this: An attacker must succeed at every stage of an attack, while a defender only needs to stop them once. This asymmetry is what gives defenders a strategic advantage. By aligning defensive controls with each stage of the attack lifecycle, organizations can interrupt threats early, reduce impact, and strengthen overall resilience. Defensive strategy across the kill chain. Effective cybersecurity is not about a single control. It is about layered defense, where each stage of an attack is met with targeted countermeasures. Reconnaissance. Right arrow. Reduce visibility. During reconnaissance, attackers gather intelligence about their target. The less information available, the harder it becomes for them to plan an effective attack. Defensive focus. Limit public exposure of sensitive information, employees, systems, infrastructure. Reduce social media footprint and avoid oversharing organizational details. Hide or restrict system identifiers such as server banners and version disclosures. Monitor for external scanning and enumeration. Attempt strategic goal. Minimize the attacker's ability to map your environment. Weaponization. Reduce exploitability. At this stage, attackers prepare tools to exploit known weaknesses. If vulnerabilities are removed, weaponization becomes ineffective. Defensive focus. Maintain strong vulnerability management programs. Apply regular software updates and security patches. Remove or replace unsupported and legacy systems. Conduct periodic security assessments and penetration testing. Strategic goal. Eliminate the weaknesses attackers depend on. Delivery. Right arrow. Block entry points. Delivery is one of the most critical interception points, where the attacker attempts to introduce the malicious payload. Defensive focus. Implement advanced email filtering and anti-phishing solutions. Use web proxies and secure gateways to block malicious websites. Conduct continuous security awareness training for users. Restrict use of removable media and unauthorized download. Strategic goal. Prevent malicious content from ever reaching the target. Exploitation. Right arrow. Prevent execution. Even if a payload is delivered, it must still exploit a vulnerability to execute. Preventing execution stops the attack before compromise occurs. Defensive focus. Deploy endpoint protection and exploit mitigation tools. Disable unnecessary services and reduce system attack surface. Enforce least privilege access to limit user capabilities. Harden system configurations according to security baseline. Strategic goal. Ensure that delivered threats cannot activate. Installation. Detect persistence. If exploitation succeeds, attackers attempt to install malware and maintain long-term access. Defensive focus. Use endpoint detection and response, EDR, to monitor system changes, detect unauthorized file creation, registry modifications, or persistence mechanisms. Implement application whitelisting to block unknown software. Regularly audit system integrity. Strategic goal. Identify and remove unauthorized presence immediately. Command and control. C2. Right arrow. Disrupt communication. At this stage, compromised systems communicate with the attacker. Blocking this communication isolates the threat. Defensive focus. Apply network egress filtering to control outbound traffic. Monitor for unusual or anomalous network patterns. Use DNS filtering and threat intelligence feeds. Detect encrypted or covert communication channels. Strategic goal. Cut off the attacker's ability to control the system. Actions on objectives limit impact. If all previous defenses fail, the focus shifts to minimizing damage. Defensive focus. Implement data loss prevention (DLP) to protect sensitive information. Encrypt critical data to reduce exposure. Maintain secure, tested backup systems for rapid recovery. Activate incident response and containment procedures. Strategic goal. Reduce the consequences and recover quickly. Key insight. Cybersecurity is not about stopping every attack perfectly. It is about creating multiple opportunities to stop an attack before it succeeds. By applying strategic controls at each stage of the kill chain, organizations transform defense from reactive to proactive. Instead of waiting for breaches to occur, they actively reduce the likelihood of success at every step. By viewing attacks as a chain, you shift from patching everything to identifying where you are weakest. If you have excellent email filtering, you are disrupting the delivery phase. If you have robust network segmentation, you are making it significantly harder for an attacker to progress from installation to actions on objectives. Summary: the kill chain turns the abstract concept of an attack into a sequence of measurable, observable events. By identifying where your security controls map to these stages, you can transform your defense from a reactive posture into an active, strategic disruption of the adversary's intent. Real-world case study. NotPetya ransomware attack overview. NotPetya is a masterclass in how a single, localized infection can spiral into a global catastrophe by exploiting the interconnected nature of modern enterprise systems. In June 2017, what began as a supply chain compromise of a legitimate Ukrainian accounting software package, MEDOC, rapidly evolved into one of the most destructive cyberattacks in history, causing over $10 billion in total damages. The mechanics of the attack, unlike traditional ransomware, which aims to extort money from individual victims, NotPetya was a wiper disguised as ransomware. Its primary goal was the permanent destruction of data. It utilized a dual-pronged approach to spread: software update backdoors and automated lateral movement. Supply chain poisoning. The attackers compromised the update servers of MEDOC, a software suite mandated for tax accounting in Ukraine. When users initiated the legitimate check for updates process, they weren't downloading a patch. They were downloading a malicious payload. Because this payload was digitally signed by the vendor, it bypassed many traditional signature-based detection systems. Automated lateral movement. Once inside a corporate network, NotPetya did not wait for user interaction. It immediately began scavenging the environment for credentials to move laterally. First, credential harvesting. It used a tool similar to Mimikatz to dump memory and extract plaintext passwords, hashes, and Kerberos tickets from the local machine. Second, exploitation. It deployed the Eternal Blue exploit, a leaked NSA vulnerability targeting the SMB, or server message block, protocol to jump to unpatched machines. Third, credential spraying. It used the harvested credentials to gain access to other workstations and servers via PS exec and WMI, or Windows management instrumentation, allowing it to execute code remotely as an administrator. From initial compromise to full-scale impact, understanding attack progression. Cyberattacks rarely occur as isolated events. Instead, they unfold as a sequence of interconnected actions, where one successful step enables the next. By examining how an attack evolves from initial entry to widespread impact, we gain critical insight into how to detect, contain, and prevent escalation. The following sequence illustrates a typical progression scene in advanced attacks, particularly those involving wormable exploits and ransomware campaigns. Credential scraping. After gaining initial access to a system, attackers often begin by extracting credentials stored in memory or local files. These credentials may include usernames, passwords, or authentication tokens. This step allows attackers to move beyond the initially compromised machine and access additional systems without triggering immediate suspicion. Security insight. Credential protection mechanisms, such as secure credential storage and multi-factor authentication, are essential to limiting this stage. SMB vulnerability exploitation. The attacker identifies a weakness in the server message block protocol, commonly used for file sharing and network communication. By exploiting this vulnerability, the attacker can execute code remotely on other machines within the network, often without requiring valid credentials. Security insight. Unpatched network services are a critical risk. Regular updates and disabling unnecessary protocols significantly reduce exposure. Compromised update server. In more advanced scenarios, attackers target trusted infrastructure, such as software update servers. By compromising these systems, they can distribute malicious code disguised as legitimate updates. This method leverages trust, making detection more difficult. Security insight. Supply chain security and verification of update integrity are essential defenses. Legitimate software update, weaponized. Users and systems receive what appears to be a normal software update. However, the update has been tampered with and contains malicious code. Because it originates from a trusted source, it bypasses many traditional security checks. Security insight. Code signing validation and monitoring for unusual update behavior are critical. Infected workstation. Once the malicious payload is executed, the workstation becomes compromised. At this point, the attacker has a foothold within the environment. The infected system may begin communicating with external command and control servers or scanning the internal network. Security insight. Endpoint detection tools must identify abnormal behavior quickly to prevent further spread. Lateral movement. Using stolen credentials or exploited vulnerabilities, the attacker moves from one system to another within the network. This step allows the attacker to expand access and identify high-value targets. Security insight. Network segmentation and least privilege access help contain lateral movement. Internal network propagation. The attack spreads across multiple systems, often automatically. Worm-like behavior enables rapid infection of devices without direct human intervention. At this stage, the attack transitions from targeted to widespread. Security insight. Strong internal monitoring and segmentation are key to slowing or stopping propagation. Eternal blue exploitation, a well-known example of SMB exploitation. Eternal blue enables attackers to execute code remotely across vulnerable systems. This exploit was used in major global attacks due to its ability to propagate quickly across networks. Security insight. Timely patching and vulnerability management are critical defenses against known exploits. Domain controller. Compromise. The attacker gains control of the domain controller, the central authority for authentication and access management within a network. This level of access provides near-complete control over the environment. Security insight. Protecting privileged accounts and monitoring domain activity is essential to preventing catastrophic compromise. Mass encryption of data. Once control is established, the attacker executes the final payload, often ransomware, encrypting files across systems. This renders critical data inaccessible and disrupts operations. Security insight. Regular, secure backups and rapid detection mechanisms are vital at this stage. Permanent data loss. If backups are unavailable, compromised, or outdated, the organization may face irreversible data loss. This represents the ultimate impact: financial damage, operational shutdown, and reputational harm. Security insight. Resilient backup strategies and disaster recovery planning are essential to long-term survival. Key insight. This progression highlights a critical reality. Cyberattacks escalate through opportunity. A single vulnerability or oversight can trigger a chain reaction, transforming a minor breach into a full-scale compromise. Effective cybersecurity requires not only preventing initial access, but also detecting and interrupting escalation at every stage. The wiper distinction. The payload encrypted the master file table of the NTFS file system and overwrote the master boot record. While the software displayed a ransom note demanding payment in Bitcoin, the encryption key generated by the malware was essentially garbage. Even if a victim paid the ransom, there was no technical mechanism to recover the files. The intent was not financial gain, it was sabotage. Lessons in vulnerability and scope. Not Petya succeeded because it exploited trust in two ways. Trusting the vendor. By poisoning a trusted software update, the attackers bypassed the perimeter defenses that companies rely on to keep threats out. Trusting the network. By moving laterally using legitimate administrative tools like PsExec, the malware mimicked the behavior of an IT administrator. Traditional antivirus systems often struggle to distinguish between a malicious script running with admin privileges and a sysadmin performing a routine maintenance task. The speed of the attack was the defining factor. In a matter of minutes, an entire global network could be encrypted, effectively paralyzing logistics, manufacturing, and shipping giants like Maersk and FedEx. Summary: NotPetya transitioned the cybersecurity conversation from "how do we prevent an initial breach" to "how do we survive a total network compromise." It highlighted the failure of single-layer defense strategies and underscored that when an attacker gains administrative-level access, the perimeter is irrelevant. This sets the stage for our upcoming discussion on defense in depth, where we evaluate how to segment networks and enforce least privilege access to prevent a localized breach from becoming a total enterprise collapse. Module 2. Security Architecture and Controls Principles of Defense in Depth. Defense in depth is the strategy of layering multiple independent security controls so that if one fails, others are in place to stop, delay, or detect an adversary. Rather than relying on a single hard shell, like a firewall, to protect sensitive data, defense in depth assumes that every layer of the technology stack can and will be compromised. The principle of layered security: a robust architecture creates friction for an attacker. Every time an adversary must bypass a new control, they increase their work factor, the time, effort, and risk of exposure they incur. If a single exploit provides an attacker with immediate, unfettered access to your crown jewels, your architecture lacks depth. Consider a standard web application environment. A defense-in-depth approach treats the network, the host, the application, and the data as distinct domains, each with its own gatekeepers. First, the network layer. Perimeter firewalls and network segmentation block unauthorized traffic at the border. Second, the host layer. Endpoint security software like EDR and hardened OS configurations monitor for suspicious process execution on the server itself. Third, the application layer. Input validation and rate limiting prevent SQL injection or brute force attacks from reaching the database. Fourth, the data layer. Encryption at rest and fine-grained access controls ensure that even if an attacker gains shell access to a server, the raw data remains unreadable without the proper keys or credentials. Failure modes: and the goal of layering is not just redundancy, but heterogeneity. If you use 3 different brands of firewalls, you still have a single point of failure: the network-level logic. A truly effective strategy uses different types of controls, technical, administrative, and physical, to ensure that a single vulnerability, like a software bug, does not bypass the entire security stack. Layered defense in action: how controls interrupt an attack. Modern cybersecurity is built on a simple but powerful principle: no single control is sufficient on its own. Instead, security relies on multiple layers working together, each designed to either block, detect, or contain an attack. This approach, often referred to as defense in depth, ensures that even if one control fails, others remain in place to stop the adversary. The sequence below illustrates how an attacker interacts with different security layers, and how each layer can either block or allow progression. Perimeter firewall. First line of defense as the attacker attempts to enter the network. The perimeter firewall evaluates incoming traffic based on predefined rules. If the traffic is identified as malicious, it is blocked and the attack fails. If the traffic appears legitimate or bypasses filtering, it is allowed through. The firewall acts as the gatekeeper, but it cannot stop everything, especially sophisticated or disguised attacks. Security insight. Firewalls reduce exposure but must be complemented by deeper inspection mechanisms. Endpoint detection and response. Behavioral monitoring. If the attacker bypasses the perimeter, the next layer is the endpoint itself. EDR solutions monitor system behavior in real time. If suspicious activity is detected, it is blocked and the attack fails. If activity appears normal or evades detection, it is allowed to continue. At this stage, the focus shifts from filtering traffic to analyzing behavior. Security insight. Behavioral detection is critical for identifying advanced threats that bypass traditional defenses. Application authentication. Access control layer. Once inside the system, the attacker attempts to interact with applications or services. Authentication mechanisms determine whether access is granted. If authentication fails, the attempt is blocked and the attack fails. If valid credentials are obtained or bypassed, access is authorized. This layer protects critical resources by ensuring only verified users gain access. Security insight. Strong authentication, such as MFA, significantly reduces the risk of unauthorized access. Data encryption. Protecting the final asset. Even if the attacker reaches sensitive data, encryption acts as the final protective barrier. If encryption is properly implemented, the attack is blocked and fails. If encryption is weak, absent, or keys are compromised, the attacker is allowed through. Encryption ensures that data remains unreadable without proper authorization. Security insight. Data protection must assume that attackers may eventually reach the data layer. Compromise outcome. If the attacker successfully bypasses or defeats each layer, the result is a successful compromise. At this point, the attacker achieves their objective, whether that is data theft, system disruption, or persistence within the environment. Key insight. This model demonstrates a critical principle of cybersecurity. Security is not about perfection at a single point. It is about resilience across multiple layers. Each control introduces an opportunity to stop the attack. The more layers in place, the lower the probability of a successful compromise. Even when one layer fails, others can still protect the system. When layers collide, the weakest link, reality. The primary trade-off in defense in depth is complexity. Every layer added introduces new management overhead, potential performance bottlenecks, and the risk of misconfiguration. For example, implementing an intrusion prevention system that inspects deep packet payloads adds latency. If the IPS is misconfigured to be overly restrictive, it may trigger false positives that break legitimate business traffic. If it is too permissive, it becomes a paper tiger, a layer that exists on paper but fails to stop real-world attacks. To maintain effectiveness, focus on these three pillars. Independence. A control should not depend on the health of the previous layer to function. If your internal server is compromised, it should still require a separate, second factor of authentication to access the database. Visibility. Each layer must log its activity to a centralized point, like a SIEM. If your firewall blocks an attack but your EDR doesn't see a follow-up probe, you lose the ability to perform correlation and incident response. Default deny. Every layer should follow a deny all, permit by exception policy. If a traffic pattern or user behavior isn't explicitly required, it shouldn't be allowed. Distinguishing between redundancy and depth, there is a common misunderstanding that adding more of the same control equals better defense. Adding a second firewall behind the first is redundancy, not necessarily defense in depth. Defense in depth requires diversity. A better configuration would include the following: a network firewall to filter traffic based on IP and port, a web application firewall, or WAF, to filter traffic based on HTTP signatures, for example, detecting cross-site scripting or SQL injection patterns. An identity-based access through IAM to verify the user identity regardless of where they are connecting from. By layering controls that inspect traffic from different dimensions, network, application, and identity, you cover blind spots that a single layered approach would miss entirely. Summary: defense in depth transforms security from a fragile perimeter model into a resilient architecture. By acknowledging that any individual control, no matter how sophisticated, can be bypassed, you force an attacker to solve multiple, distinct, and increasingly difficult problems to reach their goal. This increases the likelihood of detection and ensures that a single point of failure does not result in a total catastrophe. Types of security controls. administrative, technical, and physical. Security controls are the specific mechanisms, policies, and procedures impl.